Hello students, today we are discussing a very interesting concept called memory. The moment I say memory, I know everyone smiles. What is the reason? The reason is simple. Everyone can associate their own experiences with this term called memory. How many of you can confidently say, I have a very good memory? Very few will raise their hand because it is our day-to-day experience where number of times we say, I have placed certain things but I am unable to remember where I have placed, or I have prepared for the exams but I am unable to recall now in the examination hall. So, all these experiences indicate that we have a strong association with this concept called memory. In today's discussion, we will be discussing about what is this memory, what is happening in this memory system, what are the processes that are involved in this, is there anything that we can do so that like our memory can be strengthened. So, let us see some of these concepts. Before we understand these concepts, how do you define memory? Memory is nothing but, in simple words, it is the ability to remember. But if we have to technically say, it can be defined as a process wherein we encode, we store the information and we retrieve the information. So, when I say this concept, when I say this kind of a definition, you can understand that there are three processes involved in this memory: encoding, storage and retrieval. Now, let us understand about these three processes. What is this encoding? Encoding is nothing but it is a process wherein we try to use some kind of a methodology to register the information. Encoding is nothing but registering the information. Then what about the storage? It is not sufficient if we just encode the information, if we just register the information. We have to store the information in an effective way. So, this storage focuses upon where we store the information. Then comes the last process called retrieval. In this retrieval process, whatever we have encoded, whatever we have stored, we try to retrieve this information, that is, try to remember this information whenever we want to use this information. So, these are the very simple definitions of three processes. In fact, we can see the analogous to this kind of a computer system. We can compare or we can see the similarities in the computer system and the memory system. If you can look at this figure, probably you will understand that encoding is nothing but how you are functioning with your keyboard. Storage is nothing but it is the hard disk, and retrieval is nothing but it is displaying the information on the screen. So, these three are the similar functions related to the computer and our memory system. Now, let us try to understand all these three processes: encoding, storage and retrieval. When I said encoding is nothing but registering the information, it is taking in the information from our sensory environment, that is from the outside world, how we are trying to understand through our senses and we are trying to register it. This encoding can be effortful, this encoding can be automatic. So, these are the two processes involved while we register the information. When I said automatic processing, what is automatic processing? It is without any conscious effort, we try to remember the information. We do not deliberately make an effort to remember it. On the other hand, when I say it is effortful processing, consciously we make an attempt to remember the information and to retrieve the information at a later time. For example, the moment you were given the examination dates, you started reading your subjects. What is that you are doing here? You are making a conscious effort to read the material, to register the information and to remember that information. This is like an effortful processing. But sometimes in our day-to-day activities, it is not always the information is processed effortfully, but sometimes it happens even automatically. When you are doing the effortful processing, generally we use the rehearsal method, that is, we try to remember the information, repeat the information so that the information will be registered in an effective way. And to register this information, we use the imagery method, that is, imagining in the form of pictures or trying to understand the meaning so that the information can be encoded in an effective way. It is not just one type of information that is encoded. There are different types of encoding, like semantic encoding, where you are reading the book, you are trying to understand the meaning of the words, and then you are trying to register that information. Sometimes it could be acoustic encoding. When you are listening to a music, when you are listening to a tune, you are making an effort to remember to that kind of a sound, that is registering the tune of the song, that is acoustic encoding. And sometimes the encoding can be visual encoding, that is by looking at the stimulus, by trying to observe the stimulus, and by trying to use that information at a later date, you try to use the visual encoding. Sometimes it could be imagery, that is imagining a particular situation, imagining what you are reading, trying to have a picture of it so that the information will be registered. Sometimes we try to encode the information by organizing the information in the form of chunks or in the form of hierarchies. So, encoding can be done at different levels in different forms. So, these three processes, encoding, storage and retrieval, explain us as how the three systems operate successfully, but they do not mention how the memory system stores the information. So, now let us try to understand the different storages that the human mind have. We can say there are three systems of memory or three storehouses of memory. Can you give the answer? What are those three memory systems or storehouses? Probably you might have heard about sensory memory, short term memory and long term memory. So, these three are the storehouses of human memory. Let us discuss about these different storehouses in detail. Now, what is sensory memory? Sensory memory is nothing but whatever information you are trying to get from our environment, you try to remember that information only for a brief period, that is less than a fraction of a second, that is called sensory memory. The second storehouse of memory is short term memory. Here also we can remember the information for a very brief period, that is less than 30 seconds, or we can say 15 to 30 seconds. If the information has to be remembered forever for a longer time, the information from short term memory has to enter into the long term memory, where relatively the duration of the long term memory would be permanent. That is what the researchers have been pointing out. So, these are the three memory storehouses. Now, let us try to understand each memory storehouse in detail. We can say that this kind of an idea, this conception of about three memory houses is given by Atkinson and Shiffrin. This process, that is the memory storehouses model, is the most influential and comprehensive model which has a cognitive perspective. And according to this model, there are three systems: sensory, short term and long term. All these systems vary in terms of their function and also the length of the time that they retain the information. If you just look at this slide, to understand this Atkinson and Shiffrin model, there are number of external events which are bombarding on us. That is, either we see those inputs, that is either we see those events, or sometimes we hear those sounds, or sometimes it could be in the form of a touch, in the form of a smell. So, anything that is bombarding on our senses from the outside world, we can call them as the sensory inputs. But do we remember all these inputs right from the beginning of the day till the late night, whatever we get exposed to? We do not remember, because there are thousands and thousands of experiences which we have seen, heard or touched upon. But how can we remember only some significant information, some important information? Suppose like when you are in the traffic today in the morning, when you are coming to the college, you might have heard a peculiar sound of a vehicle. You may not be remembering different kinds of sounds that you heard from morning till night, but this peculiar sound is remembered. What is the reason? That is because there is some kind of a pattern recognition which has occurred, some kind of a significance that has been attached to that. So, that information, it was not only recognized, but passed on to the next memory store, that is short term memory. In the short term memory, what is happening is you are trying to encode the information in some form or the other. How you encode, we will discuss it later. So, once that information is encoded, that is easily transferred to the long term memory, which you are seeing in the slide. So, once it is stored in the long term memory, whenever we require the information, we try to retrieve it from the long term. So, this sensory information or this kind of a sensory memory, it is the first repository of information that the world has presented to us. It could be something like a momentary flash of lightning, or it could be the sound of a twig snapping, etc. Though it is retained for less than a fraction of a second, the memory for this sensory duration, or we can say the memory for this type of a storehouse, is very precise. Until a researcher by name George Sperling conducted a series of experiments on sensory memory, no one has recognized the significance of it. If you just look at the slide, there are certain alphabets in 3 rows presented in 4 columns, that is altogether a series of 12 letters were shown on the slide. Once he has shown this slide to a group of participants, he asked them immediately to recall these words, which were presented only for about 1/20th of a second. Remember this time, it is only for about 1/20th of a second. So, do you think that people can recall all those letters which were shown to them through a slide? The answer could be no. Within the fraction of a second, when the letters are exposed, it is difficult to remember all the letters. So, naturally the students or the participants who were given this slide could recall 3 or 4 letters, but not the whole array of letters. So, if I ask you the reason is simple. It was not encoded. All the letters were presented. Participants know that there are number of letters, more number of letters than what they have recalled, but they could not remember once they are verbalizing the first few letters which they have remembered. Now, the assumption is, if participants have seen all the letters, do we think that if we use any other method, they could remember the information in a more effective way? So, he has slightly changed the experimental pattern. For each row, he has given a tone, that is a sound. For the first row, a high sound is given. For the second row, is medium tone is given, and for the third row, a kind of a low tone is given. But these sounds are given only after the exposure of the stimulus. So, after the presentation of the stimulus, he asked the participants, if I give a high tone, you have to recall all the letters which were present in the first line. If I give a medium tone, you have to recall the letters from the middle line, and if I give a low tone, you have to recall the letters from the last line. So, the results were very surprising. The participants could recall the letters very effectively depending upon the sound. What is this is indicating? This indicates that participants were not only exposed to the stimuli for a brief period, but they were also able to represent the information in an effective way, but unless they were given the time, unless they were given a particular clue, they were not able to retrieve the information from the sensory memory. Now, there are different types of sensory memory. For example, the most important being are iconic and echoic. When I say iconic memory, this memory refers to the memory of what you have seen, what is that is visually represented, and this information lasts only for about less than a second. On the other hand, there is echoic memory, where we try to remember the information that we hear. It could be different sounds, it could be different tunes, anything. Compared to the iconic memory, the memory for echoic memory is slightly longer, that is, it can be retained for about 2 to 3 seconds. There are other different sensory memories, but not much research was done on this kind of sensory memories. However, other than iconic and echoic, there are haptic and olfactory memories on which to some extent some research was conducted. We can say about the sensory memory that though the duration of the sensory memory is very brief, still its precision is very high, and we can say the memory of it is an exact replica of each stimulus to which it is exposed. Once we have understood the sensory memory, now let us try to understand short term memory. In fact, in this short term memory, we try to give some meaning to the stimulus which we have seen. The process by which we try to transform the information from sensory memory into the short term memory is through rehearsal. So, if the information from the sensory memory has to be retained in the short term memory, the first important thing that has to be done is it has to be rehearsed, and this rehearsal accomplishes two things. One is whatever has entered into the short term memory, to maintain that information we need to rehearse. For example, I wanted to try a new call, a new number to one of the strangers. I have taken a number from my friend. So, till I dial the number, I try to rehearse the number. Once I dial the number, once I speak to the person, if you ask me what is that new number to whom you have tried, the memory would be nil. I do not remember which number I have dialed, because till I dial the number I was rehearsing it, repeating it. So, that information was stored in the short term memory until I accomplished the task, but once the task is over, it is not in my mind. So, this rehearsal is called as maintenance rehearsal. Then another type of rehearsal which we use is elaborative rehearsal. If the information has to pass on from short term memory to long term memory, maintenance rehearsal will not be sufficient. Then what is this elaborative rehearsal? Whatever we have seen, whatever we have heard, we try to elaborate it by trying to add some logic, or by trying to add some more words or some more meaning, or try to have some image to the words or the sounds that you have seen, where you are trying to prolong, you are trying to elaborate what you have encoded. So, this information or this process will help us to transfer the information from short term memory into long term memory. So, what is the question that arises is how much of the information we can store in the short term memory. So, many studies indicated, especially those conducted by Miller, we can save the information in terms of chunks, and this information and these chunks can be 7 chunks plus or minus 2. So, what is this chunk? A chunk can be a meaningful stimuli, a meaningful grouping of stimuli that can be stored as a unit in short term memory. For example, if you look at this slide P, B, S, F, O, X, etc., you can look at the slide. Suppose if I ask you to remember this information after presenting for a very brief period, that is for about 15 to 30 seconds, can you recall this information in the same sequence? Probably not. But suppose if I ask you, use the chunking method, can you try this? For example, the same letters are presented in the form of chunks PBS, FOX, CNN, ABC, CBS, MTV, NBC. If I present the same 21 letters in this group of chunks, don't you think it would be easy for you to recall these letters? Or even if I do not present this in the form of chunks, but if you use the chunking method for the previous slide where you have seen single letters, definitely the amount of information that you can remember will be great. So, this is called chunking method. I think definitely you will be trying this method in your day to day life, though you might not be knowing that this is the chunking method. Another way or another process which can be used to transform the information from short term memory to long term memory is mnemonics. If you can use this method, you can transfer the information to the long term memory. Suppose like your mother asked you to buy some vegetables. Which method do you follow? Obviously, all of you can say that writing on a paper. But suppose if that is not provided to you, a list of vegetables on paper is not provided to you, then what can you do? You can use something like an mnemonics called method of loci, where you try to imagine all the vegetables that your mother asked you to purchase as if like a form filled with one row of tomatoes, one row of bananas, one row of brinjals, one row of curry vegetables, all these things, leafy vegetables, all these things. So, do not you think that you would be remembering this image, and then without forgetting you would try to recall this kind of an list of the vegetables that your mother has asked you to purchase? So, this is called mnemonics, or you can say organizational strategies. You are trying to organize the information to remember them in a better way. Now, coming to the long term memory, this is the final storehouse of memory. It has unlimited capacity. Because we have long term memory, in fact, we need not remember our names every day, we need not repeat our friends' names every day, we need not read our alphabets or numbers every day. Just imagine if you do not have the long term memory and every day you have to read alphabets, numbers, tables, everything. So, what sort of a world you will be living in? It would be a chaos, anarchy, right? So, we are thankfully to the long term memory, we are leading a more organized life. So, whatever information is stored in the long term memory, whenever it is needed, we try to retrieve it. Now, once you have understood these three storehouses of memory, just look at this slide to summarize this. Sensory memory, short term memory, long term memory. What is their capacity? Sensory's capacity is large capacity and short term is limited, and once again long term memory capacity is unlimited. Now, what sort of information these memory storehouses contain? If you see, sensory memory contains sensory information. In the short term memory, acoustically encoded information, that is phonemic encoding takes place, and in the long term memory it would be semantically coded information. Another important aspect is how long the information will be retained. In the sensory memory, for a very brief period, that is half second for visual, 2 seconds for auditory, and in the short term it is up to 15 to 30 seconds without any rehearsal, and in the long term memory it is assumed that the information would remain permanent, and in the short term memory you consciously process the information, and in the long term memory information is highly organized. I think this slide will help you to understand all the three processes of memory, three storehouses of memory in a detailed way. Now, is this only one approach to understand the memory? Whatever we have discussed now, it is the model given by Atkinson and Shiffrin, which has a cognitive perspective. But is this the only memory which helps us to understand about our memory system? There are certain criticisms leveled against this kind of a model. They said, according to this traditional model of memory, information process sequentially from one stage to the other, that is starting from sensory to short term and then to long term where it ends. But the contemporary approaches to memory, they say information will be processing not in a serial way, but in a parallel processing way. So, it is not just confined at one place. Parallelly, the information is encoded and stored at different places. So, under these contemporary approaches, there are different models like working memory, memory modules and association models of memory. Let us quickly understand what are these. In fact, working memory is nothing but short term memory is conceived as information processing system known as working memory. Working memory can be considered as an active workspace in which information is retrieved and manipulated and in which information is held through rehearsal. Working memory contains a central executive processor which is involved in reasoning and decision making. And this central executive coordinates two distinct storage and rehearsal systems called as visual store and the verbal store. The slide shows the similar aspects of what we have mentioned just now. Central executive has visual store which has visual and spatial material. Central executive has verbal store which contains speech, words and numbers. So, what is the significance of this working memory? We use the visual store, we use the verbal store, and the advantage of this is whatever information we are storing in this particular state, that is in the active state, that is till you accomplish a particular task, the information will be retained with you. For example, you are solving an arithmetic problem which has number of steps. Till you complete solving the problem, whatever you have done in the earlier step, don't you remember the processing, what you have done to arrive at an answer? Suppose if you forget what you have done in the earlier step, the next step you cannot proceed. So, when you are working on a particular task, till you accomplish it, the related information will be enabling you to complete the task. Just imagine what happens if there is a breakdown in this working memory. The result is the person would be suffering with Alzheimer's disease, a memory disorder which is commonly found nowadays among most of the oldest people. So, we have to see that the working memory is functioning in its own effective way. Now, coming to long-term memory modules. According to this approach, long-term memory has several components of memory, or you can say memory modules. One major distinction with this long-term memory is declarative memory and procedural memory. Did you hear these concepts, declarative memory and procedural memory? Suppose like if I ask you, who is the first president of India, or who is the first woman prime minister of India, what do? You try to remember, you try to see where you have studied, in which class, where you have read, which newspaper or which general knowledge book, and you try to give the information. So, this information is about the world, these are the facts, the general knowledge which you possess, the language, the grammar, irrespective of the language, all these are the facts. This is called declarative memory. On the other hand, the procedural memory is called as non-declarative also. This procedural memory contains your own skills, like your riding of a bicycle, or if you know the swimming. So, all the skills that you have, the abilities that you have in performing a particular behavior, particular art, all these things come under the procedural skills. Now, to understand about this long-term memory modules, look at this slide. The slide shows different types of long-term memories. As I have already mentioned, it can be divided into declarative, which is explicit, that is which can be seen by the others and which you are conscious of, and the other is procedural, call it as non-declarative, and it is implicit. It is not done consciously, that is you may not be able to remember this information consciously, but when the time demands you try to use that information. When the declarative memory can further be divided into semantic memory and episodic memory. So, semantic memory is nothing but the facts about your general knowledge. Whatever examples I gave you just few minutes back about your tables, about your mathematical sums, or about your general knowledge, all these things come under the semantic memory. Then the declarative memory can also be divided into episodic memory. Episodic memory indicates the significant experiences that happen in your life. When did you first join in the school? What was your experience? Or the day you have got your gold medal, the day you have graduated, all these things come under the episodic memory. Similarly, the procedural memory can be called as skills, that is motor and cognitive, all the skills that you have learnt in playing the games or in riding the vehicles, and then your personal characteristics. So, we can say the declarative memory contains the information about the things, while procedural memory contains the information about how to do the things. And this basic distinction between procedural and declarative memory is given by a researcher called Tulving. Another model of memory which is in the contemporary approaches is associative models of memory. So, this model was postulated by Collins and Quillen and Collins and Loftus. This model suggests that memory consists of mental representations of clusters of interconnected information. According to this model, if you think of one particular concept, you are able to generate more of the information which is interrelated to that concept. For example, the moment I ask you the meaning of an animal, what comes to your mind? Animal has 4 legs, or animal can be carnivorous, herbivorous, or animals can be wild, domestic. So, all this information is triggered by just one word given by me, that is animal. Similarly, if I say bird, you can think of a robin is a bird, it eats worms. So, any information related to that. So, activating one memory triggers a large amount of information related to the similar concepts, and this is known as spreading activation model. Associative memory also accounts for a priming effects. It is a phenomena in which exposure to a word or a concept later makes it easier to recall related information. This priming effects occur when a person has no conscious memory of the original word or the concept. Then there is another approach called levels of processing theory. According to this theory, depending upon at what level the information is encoded, the memory would be effective. So, this model is postulated by Craik and Lockhart. According to this model, there are 3 levels. One is shallow level, where the shallow processing takes place. One is intermediate level, where intermediate processing takes place, and the third level is deep level, where deep processing takes place. So, what type of encoding occurs at these levels? At the shallow level, only the physical structure of the stimulus is encoded. For example, if I show you an advertisement paper and say the term Reliance is typed in capital letters or in small letters. So, the moment you see the advertisement and then immediately respond to me whether the word is in capital or small letters correctly, that is, you have encoded that information at the shallow level. At the intermediate level, the information will be encoded at the in a phonemic form, that is, whether any rhyming takes place. And at the deeper level of processing, the information is encoded in the form of semantic form, that is, you are trying to understand the meaning of it. Suppose if I say truck, and then if I ask, does the word truck belong to the furniture category? So, what would be your answer? If it is not a furniture category, you would say no. If it is a furniture category, you would say yes. So, to understand the word furniture and the truck, you should have some kind of a semantic information there, otherwise you cannot give the accurate answer. So, according to this model, the deeper the level of processing, that is, if the information is encoded in a semantic form, only then the information can be retrieved in a more effective way. So, once we have understood about encoding and storage, what is about retrieval? Retrieval is getting the information out of our storehouses. So, here retrieval can be understood through different methods like recall, recognition and relearning. So, how will a person's memory is tested, that is, whether the person could retrieve the information in an effective way or not? One simple way is your exam. Whatever you have studied throughout the academic year, your final exam or any other exam for that matter proves whether you could recall the information that you have studied throughout the year or not in an effective manner or not. So, I am asking a question and you are trying to answer, that is recall. Then recognition. When you answer your multiple choice questions where you are given 4 options and you have to choose the correct answer for your question. So, this is recognition. There are certain clues which are available. If you have studied, if you know the correct answer, it would be easy for you to pick out the right answer from the list. Then the other one is relearning. Relearning is first time you have studied one lesson or say a poem, you have taken 5 trials to read it. After a week or after 10 days, when you are studying the same poem again, how many trials you have taken? Same trial, same number of trials, or you have reduced the trials. So, this can be calculated by using a simple formula like original trials minus relearning trials by original trials into 100. So, this gives you the how much of the percentage of savings occurred in terms of your trials. So, these are the 3 methods through which we can try to assess the retrieval process of the human being. There are other kinds of memory like flashbulb memory, where we try to remember in an effective way some memories which are very important, which are very specific and which are very surprising events. They are so vivid that they are like a snapshot of the event. For example, it could be you have witnessed an accident long before, but still you are able to say that it is very fresh in your mind. That is something like a flashbulb memory. Or the first day you have met your roommate, that experience is still fresh in your memory. You are able to say when and where you could meet the person. However, all the time the details may not be accurate, though they are easily retrieved. Then another important memory is autobiographical memory. It is something like information about our own episodic events of the life. However, sometimes it may contain the information which you do not want to remember because it is incompatible with your present. That is, you are adjusting to the life in an effective way, but you do not want to remember some of the incidents that have happened during the childhood, as they were very insulting experiences. Sometimes we tend to forget what is incompatible to deal in the present. So, this is all about our human memory, about the different processes, about the different storages and different kinds of memory.